So you want to buy a data center, find some land, put up a big windowless box, fill it with servers, and rent them out to the internet. Simple. But here's the strange part. The most valuable thing inside a data center isn't the servers. It isn't the building. It isn't even the land. It's something you can't see, can't touch, and mostly can't get. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly how a data center actually makes money, why the real product isn't computing at all, why the smartest tech companies on Earth are now begging for something a coal plant from 1970 already has, and why a data center isn't really the business almost everyone thinks it is. Data centers come in three sizes, and they're three completely different businesses. At the bottom is an edge site, a small, containerized facility, maybe half a megawatt of power, dropped near a city to keep things like streaming and mobile apps fast. You can build one for a few $1,000,000. It's the corner store of computing. In the middle is a real facility. Call it 20 to 50 megawatts. This is where the pricing gets serious, because in 2026, the industry stopped measuring data centers in square feet and started measuring them in megawatts of power. The benchmark right now is about $11.3 million per megawatt just to build the shell and the core, according to JLL. So a 50-megawatt building is already over $500 million before you've installed a single server. And then there's the top of the market, where the numbers stop sounding real. A hyperscale AI campus. OpenAI's Stargate project is projected to reach 1.2 gigawatts across more than 4 million square feet. At AI-optimized build costs, a single gigawatt facility runs somewhere between $45 and $55 billion. That's one building complex costing more than the entire annual budget of most countries. But the price of construction is the part everyone warns you about. There are two costs nobody mentions. The first is the tech fit-out. The shell is $11 million a megawatt, but the equipment that goes inside for AI can add another $25 million per megawatt on top. The building is the cheap part. The second cost is the one that actually decides whether your data center exists at all. And it's the reason this whole industry has quietly turned upside down. Now we get to the question that actually matters. Where does the money come from? On paper, a data center sells space and power to tenants. You lease them room for their servers, you provide cooling, security, and connectivity, and they pay you a monthly rate. Simple landlord business. Except the pricing tells you something weird is going on. In 2026, data center leases aren't quoted per square foot. They're quoted in dollars per kilowatt of power, per month. In primary U.S. markets, hyperscale power goes for around $100 to $150 per kilowatt every month. That means the entire value of the building is measured by one thing: how much electricity you can deliver. Not floor space, not servers, watts. Here's the easiest way to understand what you're actually selling. Imagine you own a parking garage, but you don't rent parking spots. You rent the electricity to the spots. And there's a citywide shortage of electricity. Suddenly, nobody cares how big your garage is. They care that you're one of the only people who can plug their car in at all. That's a data center in 2026. You're not renting computers. You're renting access to power that almost nobody else can get. And this is where the numbers break people's brains. Across the top 4 U.S. markets, the vacancy rate has collapsed to a record low. In Northern Virginia, the biggest data center market on Earth, vacancy fell to 0.3%. Not 3%, 0.3. For every 1,000 megawatts of capacity, 3 are available. Everything else is spoken for, often years before the building is even finished. There is no other real estate market on the planet that looks like this. A shopping mall dreams of 90% occupancy. Data centers are at 99.7. The reason is a number most people have never heard. In 2025, U.S. data centers consumed enough electricity to rank among the largest power users in the country, and Goldman Sachs projects data center power demand will rise 165% by 2030. The grid was not built for this, which means the single most valuable thing you can own isn't the data center. It's the power connection feeding it, which brings us to the part of the business the public never sees. The real game isn't building data centers. It's controlling power before anyone else can. In the industry, the phrase for it is speed to power, and it has quietly become the most valuable asset class in infrastructure. Here's how it works. To connect a large facility to the grid, you join what's called the interconnection queue. You apply for permission to draw power, and then you wait, sometimes years, while the utility studies whether the grid can handle you. In the hottest markets, that queue is now so long that the power, not the construction, is what delays the project. Building the box takes 18 months. Getting the electricity can take 5 years. So the smart operators stopped waiting. They started buying land that already has a power connection. A shovel-ready site with grid access is now worth a fortune, not because of the dirt, but because of the wire running to it. Land prices for large parcels jumped 23% in a single year. But you're not really paying for land. You're paying for a place in line. And then there's the contract that makes the whole thing print money. It's called a take-or-pay lease. When a hyperscaler signs for your power, they don't pay for what they use. They pay for what they reserved, whether they use it or not. Think about that. You get paid for electricity the tenant might never consume. In May 2026, a company called Applied Digital signed a single deal like this with one hyperscaler. 300 megawatts of capacity, a 15-year lease, $7.5 billion in guaranteed base revenue, and up to $18.2 billion if the options are exercised. One contract, one building, $18 billion, and the tenant is on the hook whether their AI models make money or not. This is the absurd part. The power itself has become something you can trade. There's a wholesale electricity market called PJM that covers the eastern US, and in it, power capacity is auctioned by the megawatt day. In late 2024, that price was $30. Within a year, it hit $330, an 11-fold increase, driven almost entirely by data centers bidding against ordinary households for the same electricity. You are not just buying power, you're cornering it. And when you corner the thing an entire civilization now runs on, you don't really have tenants. You have hostages with quarterly earnings calls. So here's the whole revenue model in one sentence. Reserved megawatts, multiplied by dollars per kilowatt, multiplied by a 15-year contract, multiplied by the fact that nobody else can get any. And every part of that equation exists because power is scarce and you got there first. So with guaranteed contracts, record low vacancy, and tenants who pay whether they show up or not, why would anyone owning a data center ever lose money? The short answer, again, is power. The same thing that makes you rich can bury you. Out of every dollar you spend, the building shell is only a small slice. Electrical systems eat 40 to 45% of the entire construction budget. Cooling takes another 15 to 25. You are not building an office. You are building a substation with a roof, and the roof is the cheap part. Then there's the cost of actually running it. A large data center consumes as much electricity as a small city, and it never turns off. Not at night, not on weekends, not on holidays. The servers run at full draw 24 hours a day, and every watt they pull becomes heat that you then have to spend more power to remove. The AI machines make this brutal. A traditional server rack drew maybe 5 to 10 kilowatts. An AI rack packed with GPUs draws 100 kilowatts or more, so dense that ordinary air conditioning physically cannot cool it, and you're forced into liquid cooling, running fluid directly across the chips. And then there's the cost nobody plans for, the equipment lead times. The high-voltage transformers that connect you to the grid are now backordered by years. 9 out of 10 large infrastructure projects run over schedule, and power procurement and transformer delays are the #1 reason. You can have the land, the building, the tenants, the money, and still sit dark for 2 years waiting on a single transformer. Over 60% of data center outages trace back to power, cooling, or cabling. And here's what makes an outage terrifying as an owner. When you sign a lease promising 99.995% uptime, that's the Tier 4 standard, you're promising the facility goes down for less than half an hour per year, total. Miss it, and the penalty clauses can erase a year of profit in an afternoon. The revenue is contractually guaranteed, so are the penalties. That fistfight between guaranteed revenue and everything that can go wrong is exactly where data center owners lose. And it usually comes down to one mistake: betting on the wrong side of a technology curve. Because here's the risk buried inside this entire boom. Right now, in 2026, most AI demand is training, building the models. But the industry expects that around 2027, inference, actually running the models for users, overtakes training as the main workload. And inference wants different hardware, in different places, closer to users. If you spent $50 billion building a training campus in the middle of nowhere, optimized for a workload that just moved somewhere else, you now own the most expensive empty warehouse in history. This has a name in the industry: stranded capacity. Every megawatt you built that nobody wants is millions of dollars earning exactly zero. And a data center cannot be repurposed into anything else. It's not like an office you can convert to apartments. It's a windowless concrete box full of specialized cooling built for machines that may already be obsolete. There's a deeper version of this fear too. The entire build-out assumes AI demand keeps climbing forever. JLL estimates the sector could require up to $3 trillion by 2030. That's a bet, placed by everyone at once, that the machines will keep needing more. If that demand ever stalls, even for a year, you have an industry that borrowed trillions against tenants whose entire business is an experiment that hasn't proven it can turn a durable profit. The revenue is guaranteed by contract. What isn't guaranteed is whether the tenants signing those contracts survive long enough to honor them. That's the whole trade. You are lending your power to the single most speculative bet in modern business and taking a 15-year contract as collateral. If the bet works, you own the toll booth to the future. If it doesn't, you own a very expensive box. Step back, and the economics of this industry are genuinely strange. A data center has the most reliable revenue mechanism in modern real estate. Vacancy near zero, contracts locked for 15 years, tenants paying for power they may never use. A landlord in any other industry would trade their soul for these numbers. And yet the whole thing rests on one fragile assumption: that the power keeps flowing and the demand keeps climbing. The moment you understand that, you understand what a data center actually is. It isn't a technology business. The tech is the tenant, not the asset. A data center is a power company that rents out its electricity in the form of computing, wrapped in enough concrete and cooling to survive the heat. Google and Microsoft and OpenAI are the customers. What you own is the outlet they have to plug into. That's why the smartest money on earth is no longer buying tech companies to ride the AI wave. It's buying the land, the power contracts, and the interconnection rights underneath them. Because the AI companies compete, burn cash, and might not all survive. But whichever ones do, they will all need power. And the power runs through your door. Time to pull it all together and answer the actual question. How much money do you make if you do this right? Two scenarios, real numbers. Scenario 1. A 5-megawatt facility delivered in 2026. At today's power-constrained pricing, once it fills up, it runs at roughly $11 to $14 million in annual revenue. It cost you somewhere around $55 to $70 million to build. It's not glamorous, but it's leased before it opens, and the tenants are locked in for a decade. Boring. And nearly recession-proof, which is exactly why 73% of industry leaders still call data centers recession-resistant. Scenario 2. You go big. A 300-megawatt AI campus, the applied digital tier. Construction and fit-out runs into the billions, and you'll carry enormous debt to get there. But the anchor lease alone is $7.5 billion guaranteed, up to $18 billion with options, over 15 years. Survive the build, land the tenant, keep the power flowing, and you're not running a business anymore. You're collecting a toll on the future of computing itself. Because that's the secret this whole industry is built on. Everyone thinks the AI race is about algorithms and chips and models. But every one of those things has to live somewhere, and that somewhere needs power, and the power is running out. So if you do decide to buy a data center, forget the servers, forget the software. Just remember the only rule that actually matters. Own the power, and you own everything that runs on it.